And one thing I couldn't help but think about when I saw it first was, how do you get to this idea? Like, what are the seeds of the idea that take you to this wonderful, beautifully realized movie?
You need to live inside of Mel Eslin's brain, which is a special place. So the initial, I guess, inspiration for this came to me very, not even 5% baked. I just had this vision of these two guys kind of running around this biodome, arguing fiercely about Super Mario Brothers. And I tend to not know what my movies are going to be about until the smart people around me get them there. And so Mel has been running our company for the last 10 years, and she's one of the most fiercely loyal, talented, supportive, beautiful people I've ever met. And it's like kind of emotional for me because I've been wanting her to have this shot to do something, and she supports all of us so much. So I brought this to her, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. Can you find something? And then she pulled all this stuff out of it.
Now I gotta cry. No, this was, I love it because Mark has the most insane, little bits of things that he's constantly bringing to me, and there was just something about this one that clicked for me, the Mario and the Last Human on Earth, and sorry, I'm trying to wipe away my tears, and we started just snowballing and throwing amazing ideas out there that we were excited about, and we went on a writer's retreat, and I was just like, I want to do something about gender, all the things I love, which is gender, sexuality, and science. Oh, and magic.
There's the log line right there. Yeah. Sorry, Sterling.
No, I just don't forget the magic.
Yeah. Sorry, Sterling. Yes, the magic.
Very important. So I wanted to ask you, this film was made during COVID, so can you talk a little bit about the challenges of that? And did you lock these actors into because it sure feels like it's authentic.
Yeah, we built this dome on a stage, and we did actually have to physically lock ourselves in when we were shooting to get it looking sealed and right. And then Sterling and I both have kids, so we were like, maybe we should sleep in here. It's kind of comfortable. We just play video games and eat fish and run.
This is good shit.
So, we were loving that. But it was a nice COVID production from a practical standpoint in that, obviously it's just two cast members and whatnot. But it was challenging in other ways.
We were prepped to live in a biodome together by that point.
Yeah.
We'd all been quarantining and we just moved it to the biodome.
Were you in the biodome, Zachary?
I sure was. Well, everyone else was watching the Olympics last summer. I was watching the Olympics of acting at
shit.
And it was just a dazzling experience every day to see these two actors at the apex of their craft just slaying this script. It's true.
Film festivals are for crying in words like apex. That's a really good transition for the thing that I really would like to ask next, which is Mark, Sterling. This film rises and falls on your performances, your relationship, the authenticity of it. Can you talk a little bit together and separately about how you approach these roles? There's a lot going on in this film.
Ooh, Jesus! I think for me, as an individual, I think my sort of personal manifestation desires to love without limits. And I come from a very conservative place in St. Louis, Missouri, where, where, growing up in the 80s, homophobia is sort of standard. It's the default way of being, to the point that you don't even recognize you're being homophobic when you use certain words. They just seem like, oh, that word means bad. It doesn't mean anything disparaging towards a group of people, it just means bad. And then you realize oh, those people, it just sort of happens like that. And so I think I've been blessed enough in this path that I've chosen to be taken out of where I grew up and recognize humanity in many forms. And I think that this film was sort of an opportunity to be like, you know what? I feel like this message is important because so many people still think that humanity can only be recognized in very particular forms that they are accustomed and familiar with. And so you start off with two dudes who know each other in a very cisgender, hetero way, and then one of them changes, and he's still somebody that I love, right? And so like him sort of figuring that out, thinking that he's open-minded, thinking that he's progressive or whatnot, and then the rubber meets the road and he's like, oh shit, there's still shit inside of me. I love the idea. Oftentimes I grew up with this idea that in the church, you know, you love the sinner but hate the sin. And in that, to that extent, I was like, well, how does that individual feel? They still feel as if you're keeping them at arm's length. Like, I will love you as much as I can, but I'm still just kind of praying for you, that you find the light. I just want to love people, man. I think that's what I loved about this script, is that it was an example of people loving people. That's
I connected to this level, I guess. It's somewhat different, but similar in that I have a lot of very close relationships. I have a lot of very close male relationships. My brother and I have been working together for years. It's very complicated. Mel and I have been working together for years. It's very complicated. I love these people deeply, and I find that you know, I tend to, I think we all do this to a certain degree, put people in reductive lanes. You know, this is the nervous person, this is the strong person, this is the, you know, this. And Jay and I had that in our relationship, and Mel and I had that in our relationship. And as we started stretching out this stupid Mario Brothers dialogue that I put in there for some reason early on, I started to realize that where that came from for me is that there's a beauty in the fluidity of these roles that I've come to accept in my life, of that sometimes Mel is my rock and carries me through things, and sometimes she needs me to be that for her. And my brother's that way as well, and my relationship with my wife and my kids and everything. And that essential fluidity, learning to accept that you just need to meet someone in the morning and just be like, where are we today? And if I love you, like, we're gonna kind of bang through this, and it's gonna be a little clunky, and I gotta kind of shuck and shake with you. And that was the core of this movie. And I'll just say, you know, having Sterling in there, it's like, Mel and I have been doing this for a long time. We've been at this festival a lot, we've been making these movies, and he walks in to a family that's already existing, and he was just so open and so incredible and so fun, and just it's great breath too, you know, just really appreciate it. Yeah.
professional courtesy.
Mel, as the co-writer and director, can I ask you, it's maybe an impossible question, but if there was one thing that you want people to take away from this film, what would that be?
Yeah, that is a tough question. I think,
Okay, you get 5.
I mean, I
The
never...
laughing wasn't terrible. That
Yeah,
was
the
nice.
last was
Yeah.
great. No, I don't want to put words or thoughts in anybody's brains, but I will say I am very opposed to definitions, and I really do believe that there is an uncomfortability in America, specifically when people can't define somebody, and when they can't define a person or they can't define a relationship. And I, as somebody myself who's always struggled to figure out the definitions and the lanes that I fit in on sexuality and queerness, I want to do away with all of them, and I think there's a lot of that was, you know, what birthed a lot of this.
Could I ask you the same question, Zachary? What would you like people to take away?
You know, I think a universal reality, something that everyone can relate to, is that we're all born into bodies that we didn't choose. We all landed miraculously in these bodies, and what we do with our lives is an exercise in bodily autonomy. And there is a biological fact there is also gender, there is also sexuality, there is also aging, there is also the fact that we are on a continuum through time, moving forward, and that we are always changing. To have a film that's about destruction, about patriarchy, about the destruction that patriarchy has caused and could cause, and where does that end? To have a film about power that's just as much about hope and perseverance and